An old wheat penny doesn't have to look impressive to deserve a second glance. Picture reaching into your pocket and pulling out a small, dark coin that appears worn out after decades of use. Most people would assume it's nothing more than an ordinary 1-cent piece and spend it without another thought. That happens every day, and countless wheat pennies quietly return to circulation because their real story goes unnoticed. Before you let another old penny slip through your fingers, take a closer look. Some of these humble coins have traveled through remarkable moments in American history, surviving generations of everyday spending while preserving the details collectors value most. The wheat penny featured today isn't famous because of a bright shine or perfect condition. Instead, it has earned lasting attention through its history, its authenticity, and the small characteristics that experienced collectors always examine before deciding what it's truly worth. Some of the greatest discoveries in coin collecting begin with a coin that almost nobody notices. A worn wheat penny sitting in an old change jar or resting at the bottom of a pocket rarely attracts attention. Its color may have faded, its edges may show years of use, and its surface may be covered with natural brown tunning collected over decades. To most people, it is simply another old cent. To a collector, it could be the beginning of an incredible story. The coin we're exploring today is the 1940 Lincoln Wheat Penny struck at the Philadelphia Mint. It represents a period when America was rebuilding its economy while watching events overseas reshape the world. Everyday life depended on small change. Pennies paid for newspapers, candy, bus fares, and countless ordinary purchases. Millions were produced to meet that demand, and they quietly entered circulation without anyone imagining that future generations would carefully search for them. When you hold a 1940 wheat penny, the first detail worth checking is the space beneath the date. If there is no mint mark, the coin was produced in Philadelphia. New collectors sometimes think the missing letter means something is wrong, but that blank space is exactly what should be there on regular Philadelphia cents from that year. It is one of the easiest ways to identify the coin correctly before looking at anything else. The front of the penny features Abraham Lincoln's portrait, created by Victor David Brenner, a design that has become one of the most recognized images in American coin history. Above Lincoln appears the familiar motto, "In God We Trust." The word liberty stands to the left, while the date 1940 appears on the right. Even after decades of circulation, these details often remain clear enough to tell the story of how carefully the coin has survived. Turn the coin over, and the famous wheat reverse immediately explains why collectors still call these coins wheat pennies. Two wheat stalks frame the center of the reverse, surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America, while E pluribus unum stretches across the top. The design celebrates American agriculture and remained in use for almost 50 years before being replaced in 1959. Although it looks simple, the coin was carefully manufactured. It contains 95% copper, with the balance made up primarily of tin and zinc. It weighs approximately 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters across, has a thickness of about 1.52 millimeters, and features a plain edge. These familiar specifications make it easier for collectors to recognize anything that appears unusual when comparing different examples. One reason the 1940 wheat penny continues to interest collectors is that every surviving example has aged differently. Some coins still display traces of their original reddish color. Others have turned chocolate brown after years of circulation, while many develop darker natural tunning that reflects decades of handling and storage. Those changes are part of the coin's history, not necessarily signs that something is wrong. This is where many beginners make an expensive mistake. They find an old penny covered with dirt or dark tunning and immediately try to polish it until it shines. Experienced collectors usually do the exact opposite. They understand that original surfaces often tell the real story of a coin's journey. Once those surfaces are removed through cleaning, they can never truly be replaced. If you watch an experienced collector examine a wheat penny, you'll notice they never rush. Instead of asking how much the coin might be worth, they slowly rotate it under a light. They study Lincoln's portrait, the lettering around the rim, the date, and the condition of the reverse. Every scratch, every worn edge, and every patch of natural color provides another clue about how the coin spent its life. Lincoln's hair is one of the first areas collectors inspect because it wears down gradually through circulation. They also examine his cheek, jawline, and coat to judge how much detail remains. Strong lettering around the edge often suggests the coin survived with less wear than many others from the same year. Even small differences can influence collector interest. The reverse deserves just as much attention. The wheat stalks gradually lose detail as a coin circulates from one owner to another. On better preserved examples, many of the fine grain lines remain visible. On heavily worn coins, those details become much softer. The inscriptions should remain readable, and experienced collectors compare these small differences whenever they evaluate two similar coins. Storage also plays an important role in a coin's appearance today. Some 1940 pennies spent generations rolling around in drawers, toolboxes, and pockets, picking up scratches and marks along the way. Others remain protected inside albums or family collections, where they avoided much of the damage caused by everyday circulation. That difference often explains why two coins from the same year can look completely different. As collectors continue searching through inherited collections and forgotten jars, the best preserved examples become more difficult to find. Time naturally reduces the number of attractive original coins because every year more pieces become damaged, cleaned, or lost. That gradual change keeps interest in the series alive and encourages collectors to examine every wheat penny they discover. Condition remains one of the biggest factors influencing collector demand. A coin showing honest circulation with clear designs often attracts more attention than one that has been heavily altered. Many collectors appreciate natural agging because it reflects authenticity rather than artificial improvement. Originality frequently matters more than perfect appearance. Professional grading can become worthwhile when a coin appears unusually well preserved or displays an unusual characteristic that deserves expert evaluation. Authentication provides confidence by confirming the coin's identity and condition, allowing buyers and sellers to compare examples using recognized grading standards. Certification does not guarantee extraordinary value, but it provides trust within the collector market. When discussing prices, it is important to stay realistic. Most circulated 1940 Philadelphia wheat pennies trade for modest amounts. Examples that reach impressive auction prices are typically coins preserved in exceptional mint state condition, featuring outstanding original color, remarkable eye appeal, or verified mint errors that make them genuinely scarce. Those pieces represent a very small percentage of surviving coins. The real excitement comes from the search itself. Every old wheat penny carries a story that stretches across generations. Before spending one, check the date, confirm whether a mint mark is present, and take a careful look at its overall condition. A few extra moments of attention can teach you far more than simply dropping the coin back into circulation. Our journey doesn't end here. The next coin in this countdown comes from a completely different chapter of American history and presents collectors with another fascinating challenge. Its appearance often causes people to overlook it, yet experienced numismatists know exactly why it deserves a closer inspection. That story is coming up next. If there is one Lincoln Wheat penny that almost everyone misidentifies, it's the 1943 steel cent. Its gray color makes many people believe they're holding a foreign coin, an arcade token, or a damaged piece of metal. Others notice the rust and scratches and immediately assume it has no collector interest. Yet this unusual penny was created during one of the most important years in American history, and every surviving example tells a story that no ordinary copper cent can. The coin we're looking at today is the 1943 D. Lincoln steel wheat penny, struck at the Denver Mint during the height of World War II. Unlike most wheat pennies, this one wasn't made from copper. America needed huge amounts of copper for military equipment, communication systems, and other essential wartime supplies. To help conserve that metal, the United States Mint made a historic decision. For 1 year, Lincoln cents were produced from zinc-coated steel instead of the traditional bronze alloy. That temporary change created one of the most recognizable coins ever issued by the mint. Imagine this penny passing through the hands of factory workers, soldiers' families, shopkeepers, and schoolchildren during 1943. It bought everyday necessities while the nation focused on supporting the war effort. Decades later, many of those same coins remain hidden inside old collections, forgotten toolboxes, and dusty jars, waiting for someone to recognize what they really are. The first thing collectors check is the date. A genuine steel cent should read 1943, and beneath the date, you'll find a small D mint mark, showing it was struck in Denver. That tiny letter is one of the first clues used to identify the coin correctly before examining anything else. The front of the coin features Victor David Brenner's familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Above his head appears the motto, "In God We Trust." The word liberty stands to the left, while the date and the Denver mint mark appear on the right. Although this design is familiar, seeing it on a steel coin instead of copper immediately makes the 1943 issue stand apart from almost every other wheat penny. Turn the coin over, and the classic wheat reverse comes into view. Two wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, while E pluribus unum stretches across the top. The design remained unchanged, but the silver-gray color gave Americans a completely different-looking penny, and many people were surprised the first time they received one in their change. Unlike earlier wheat pennies, the 1943 D cent was made from low-carbon steel coated with zinc. It weighs approximately 2.7 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, has a thickness of about 1.52 millimeters, and features a plain edge. While this composition solved the wartime copper shortage, it introduced another problem that collectors still see today. Steel is much more vulnerable to moisture than bronze. Once the thin zinc coating begins to wear away through years of circulation, the exposed steel underneath can develop rust and corrosion. That is exactly why so many surviving examples show reddish-brown rust, dark stains, rough surfaces, and patches of environmental damage. The coin in front of us is heavily circulated, with severe rust and obvious signs of long-term exposure. At first glance, it may appear beyond saving, but experienced collectors understand that its condition tells the story of decades spent in the real world. Many beginners make the mistake of trying to remove the rust with sandpaper, metal polish, or household cleaners. Unfortunately, that usually causes even greater damage. Cleaning can strip away whatever original surface remains, leave fresh scratches, and permanently change the appearance of the coin. Once those original wartime surfaces are lost, they cannot be restored. That is why collectors almost always recommend leaving historic coins exactly as they are found. When examining a heavily circulated steel cent, collectors focus on different details than they would on a bright uncirculated example. They study whether the date remains clear, whether the D mint mark is still visible, how much of Lincoln's portrait survives, and whether the reverse lettering can still be read. Even when rust covers parts of the coin, these important identifying features often remain surprisingly strong. The reverse receives the same careful attention. Collectors look for readable inscriptions, the remaining shape of the wheat stalks, and signs that the coin has not been altered or repaired. Honest circulation, even when heavy, is very different from damage caused by harsh cleaning or improper restoration. Learning that difference is an important part of becoming a knowledgeable collector. Another fascinating aspect of the 1943 D steel cent is its survival. Millions were struck, but steel proved far less durable than the bronze alloy used before and after the war. Countless examples rusted away, were thrown out because people disliked their appearance or deteriorated after decades in damp environments. Every surviving coin represents another small piece of wartime history that managed to endure despite those challenges. Collectors continue searching for steel cents because they symbolize a unique moment in American coinage. No other regular Lincoln cent combines the story of World War II, emergency metal conservation, and such an unusual composition. Even heavily circulated examples remain popular with collectors who appreciate history more than perfect appearance. If a steel cent appears exceptionally well preserved or displays an unusual characteristic, professional grading may be worthwhile. Authentication confirms that the coin is genuine and provides an independent opinion of its condition. Certification can also help protect the coin while giving future buyers additional confidence. When discussing value, it is important to keep expectations realistic. Most heavily circulated 1943D steel cents with significant rust or environmental corrosion are worth far less than high-grade examples. The extraordinary auction prices often reported in the news are generally achieved only by exceptional specimens with outstanding preservation, rare varieties, or unusual mint errors. Condition has a major influence on collector demand. Still, the real value of this coin goes beyond money. It represents a remarkable chapter in American history when the nation's coinage changed because the country needed its resources elsewhere. Every scratch, every worn edge, and every patch of rust reminds us that this little coin survived wartime commerce and decades of everyday use before reaching today's collectors. So before you dismiss an old gray penny as worthless, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for the D mint mark. Resist the temptation to clean away the rust and preserve the coin exactly as it has survived. Sometimes the most weathered pieces carry the richest stories. And as fascinating as this wartime survivor is, the next coin in our countdown brings an entirely different mystery. It looks more familiar, yet one small detail has caused generations of collectors to stop, examine it twice, and wonder whether they have discovered something truly special. The third coin in our countdown may not look impressive at first glance. In fact, if you found it mixed with loose change, you might think it had already lived out its useful life. The surface is dark from decades of natural tunning. The high points are smooth from years of circulation. Tiny marks cover both sides, and the bright copper color it once had has long since faded away. Yet this ordinary-looking coin continues to attract the attention of collectors across the United States. That coin is the 1957 D Lincoln Wheat Penny. Its value isn't found in a shiny surface or perfect condition. Instead, its appeal comes from its place in American history, its originality, and the possibility that an overlooked example could hide something far more interesting than most people expect. To understand why collectors still search for this date, we have to travel back to 1957. America was experiencing one of the strongest economic periods in its history. Families were buying new homes, highways connected growing cities, television-filled living rooms, and businesses relied on millions of pennies every day to keep commerce moving. Grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, and neighborhood shops all needed a steady supply of 1-cent coins. At the Denver Mint, massive coining presses worked day and night to meet that demand. Millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies carrying the small D mint mark were struck before leaving the mint and spreading across every corner of the country. No one imagined that nearly 70 years later, collectors would still be searching through old jars, inherited collections, estate sales, and forgotten coin albums hoping to find one that survived with honest originality. Take a closer look at the front of the coin. Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner, remains the centerpiece. Above his head appears the national motto, "In God We Trust." To the left is liberty, while the date 1957 appears on the right. Just beneath the date sits the small D mint mark, identifying Denver as the place where this coin began its journey. Turn the coin over, and the famous wheat reverse immediately tells you that this belongs to one of America's most beloved coin series. 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, while EPLUBUSUNUM stretches across the upper edge. The design is simple, balanced, and instantly recognizable to generations of collectors. Even in heavily circulated condition, these details still connect the coin to an important chapter of American numismatic history. Like other wheat pennies of the era, the 1957 D was struck from 95% copper with 5% tin and zinc. Each coin weighs about 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters across, has a thickness of roughly 1.52 millimeters, and features a plain edge. Those specifications remained remarkably consistent, allowing collectors today to compare examples and quickly notice unusual characteristics. But here's something many people overlook. A heavily circulated coin with natural brown toning is not automatically a damaged coin. Over decades of handling, copper reacts with air, humidity, temperature changes, and countless human hands. Bright orange surfaces slowly become reddish-brown, then chocolate brown, and sometimes almost black. This natural agging creates a surface that many experienced collectors actually appreciate because it reflects authenticity instead of artificial improvement. Unfortunately, that's where many coins lose part of their history. Someone sees a dark wheat penny and decides it should look shiny again. A polishing cloth comes out, metal cleaner is applied. The coin begins to sparkle, but at the same time, much of its original character disappears forever. Experienced collectors usually prefer an untouched coin with honest wear over one that has been cleaned to look newer than it really is. Originality cannot be recreated once it has been removed. And that's one of the biggest lessons every coin collector eventually learns. As the years passed, every 1957 wheat penny followed its own path. Some spent only a short time in circulation before being tucked away inside coin albums. Others remained in pockets, cash registers, vending machines, and piggy banks for decades. Those everyday journeys left behind tiny scratches, smooth high points, and natural color changes that collectors study with surprising attention. When an experienced numismatist examines a heavily circulated 1957 the first question is rarely, "How much is it worth?" Instead, they ask, "Has this coin remained original?" That single question can determine whether the coin attracts little interest or becomes an appealing addition to a collection. The inspection usually begins under bright, even lighting. Rather than looking only at the date, collectors slowly rotate the coin and watch how light moves across the surface. Natural toning often appears soft and even, with shades ranging from medium brown to deep chocolate. On an untouched coin, these colors normally blend together over many years. Artificial cleaning, however, often leaves a bright but unnatural appearance that experienced collectors recognize almost immediately. Next comes Lincoln's portrait. Even after decades of circulation, certain details should remain visible. Collectors examine the outline of Lincoln's face, the shape of his coat, the lettering around the rim, and the overall balance of the strike. Heavy circulation is expected, but a coin that still displays strong, readable design elements usually creates a better impression than one worn almost completely smooth. The reverse tells another important part of the story. The wheat stalks, although softened by years of use, should still show recognizable lines. 1 cent, United States of America, and EPLUBUSUNUM should remain clear enough to read without difficulty. Every remaining detail helps estimate how much of the original design has survived. Then attention returns to the small d mint mark beneath the date. That tiny letter confirms the coin was produced at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest facilities striking Lincoln's cents during the 1950s. Millions left the presses there, but no two surviving coins look exactly alike today. Different storage conditions, climates, and decades of circulation have given every example its own personality. One coin may have rich brown toning with smooth, even wear. Another may show darker patches where the copper reacted to moisture over time. Some develop attractive color that collectors enjoy, while others suffer corrosion or damage that greatly reduces collector appeal. Learning to recognize the difference is one of the biggest steps in becoming a knowledgeable collector. Another mistake beginners often make is confusing natural toning with dirt. A naturally toned coin has aged through normal chemical reactions over many decades. Dirt, grease, or foreign material simply sits on the surface. Trying to scrub either one away can leave tiny hairline scratches that permanently change the coin's appearance. That is why collectors repeat one piece of advice more than almost anything else. Leave the coin exactly as you found it. Once the original surface has been altered, there is no reliable way to restore it. Collectors also pay close attention to eye appeal. This doesn't mean the coin has to be perfect. Instead, it means the overall appearance feels balanced and pleasing. Even a heavily circulated 1957 D can stand out if the wear is even, the lettering remains strong, and the natural tunning creates an attractive look. Sometimes an imperfect coin tells a far better story than a flawless one. Imagine how many hands that single penny may have passed through. It might have bought a newspaper in the late 1950s, traveled across several states inside someone's pocket, rested in a child's coin jar during the 1960s, and eventually found its way into an old family collection. Every mark on the surface represents another chapter in that journey. That connection to everyday American history is one reason the Lincoln Wheat series remains one of the most collected coin series ever produced. Yet history alone doesn't create excitement. Collectors continue searching for the 1957 D because every discovery carries a small element of possibility. While most examples are ordinary circulated coins, careful inspection occasionally reveals stronger strikes, unusually well-preserved surfaces, or legitimate mint varieties that deserve closer examination. Those discoveries are uncommon, but they remind collectors why every old wheat penny deserves more than a quick glance. And that brings us to the most exciting part of the story. Once authenticity, originality, and condition have been carefully evaluated, attention finally turns to the question everyone has been waiting to ask. How does the collector market decide which 1957 D wheat pennies are simply old coins, and which examples become the ones serious collectors are willing to compete for? That's exactly where our story goes next. Have you ever spotted an old wheat penny with dark stains, green discoloration, and years of heavy wear, then assumed it was nothing more than spare change? That happens every day. Across the United States, countless worn Lincoln Wheat pennies are ignored because they look too damaged to be worth a second glance. Most people focus on shiny coins, but seasoned collectors know that age, originality, and history often matter far more than appearance. Before you spend another old penny, pause for a moment and inspect it carefully. Some of the roughest-looking coins tell the most remarkable stories, and the 1948 Lincoln Wheat penny with no mint mark is a perfect example. The story of this coin begins in 1948, during a period when America was moving forward after World War II. Communities were expanding, industries were booming, and families were rebuilding their lives. Everyday commerce depended heavily on cash, and pennies played an important role in nearly every transaction. Grocery stores, diners, gas stations, and neighborhood businesses all relied on 1-cent coins, prompting the United States Mint to strike millions of new Lincoln Wheat pennies. Decades later, these same coins continue turning up in forgotten jars, inherited collections, and old piggy banks, waiting to be rediscovered. Take a close look at the front of the coin. The familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, dominates the obverse. The national motto, "In God We Trust," stretches across the top, while liberty appears to Lincoln's left. The date 1948 is positioned to the right, and one detail immediately catches the attention of experienced collectors. There is no mint mark beneath the date. That isn't a mistake. It simply means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which did not place mint marks on regular Lincoln cents during this era. Flip the coin over and you'll find the classic wheat penny reverse. 2 wheat stalks frame the central inscriptions, giving the series its famous nickname. At the top appears E Pluribus Unum, while 1 cent stands proudly in the center above United States of America. Even after decades of circulation, this timeless design remains one of the most recognizable images in American coin collecting. The 1948 Lincoln Wheat penny was struck from 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made up of tin and zinc. When new, it displayed a bright reddish copper color, but years of circulation transformed many examples into shades of brown, black, or even green. Each coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and has a thickness of about 1.52 millimeters. These specifications help collectors identify authentic examples while examining older coins for unusual characteristics. One reason this coin is frequently overlooked is its appearance. Many surviving examples display green verdigris, dark spots, or uneven tunning. To someone unfamiliar with old copper coins, these marks may look like damage. However, knowledgeable collectors understand that not every stain tells the same story. Green areas can develop through long-term exposure to moisture and environmental conditions, while darker surfaces often result from natural oxidation over many decades. Rather than judging a coin by color alone, experienced collectors study the entire surface before reaching any conclusions. Now the real detective work begins. Imagine placing a 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny beneath a bright light and examining it with a magnifying glass. Most people would notice the discoloration and heavy wear before quickly setting it aside. Collectors do exactly the opposite. They slowly rotate the coin, inspecting every tiny detail. The portrait, lettering, and remaining design elements all provide clues about how the coin aged and whether its original surfaces have survived. Green discoloration is one of the first things experts examine. Because the coin is primarily copper, it naturally reacts to humidity and environmental exposure over time. Some green areas are stable and simply reflect decades of agging, while others may indicate active corrosion. Collectors know the difference and never judge a coin solely by its appearance. The dark areas receive just as much attention. Many black or brown patches are nothing more than natural tunning created by years of circulation or storage. Coins kept in old albums, drawers, wallets, or glass jars often develop distinctive colors that make each example unique. Collectors aren't searching for perfect brightness, they're searching for originality. That leads to one of the most important rules in coin collecting: never clean an old wheat penny. Polishing or scrubbing the surface removes the original finish, creates tiny scratches, and permanently changes the coin's appearance. Even a heavily circulated coin with honest wear is usually far more desirable than one that has been artificially cleaned. Collectors also study Lincoln's portrait carefully. They examine the outline of his profile, remaining hair detail, and the clarity of the inscriptions. Even on a heavily circulated coin, readable lettering and a clear date can make a significant difference. Honest circulation wear is expected, but coins that retain strong design elements are generally more appealing. The reverse receives the same careful inspection. Experts look at the remaining detail in the wheat ears, the sharpness of 1 cent, and the visibility of United States of America. Small differences in strike quality and preservation often separate one coin from another. Another feature collectors always verify is the absence of a mint mark. Confirming that blank space beneath the date is one of the first steps in identifying the Philadelphia issue. From there, they continue searching for unusual characteristics, die varieties, or other details that deserve closer attention. Although millions of 1948 Philadelphia wheat pennies were produced, far fewer remain in untouched original condition today. Years of circulation, improper cleaning, environmental exposure, and accidental damage have reduced the number of attractive survivors. That's why collectors continue searching through estate sales, inherited collections, antique shops, and forgotten coin jars in hopes of finding well-preserved examples. Condition plays a major role in collector demand, but originality often matters even more. A worn coin with natural surfaces usually attracts greater interest than one that has been polished to look newer. Experienced collectors evaluate the complete picture rather than focusing on a single flaw. Professional grading can also become an important step for coins that appear especially well-preserved or unusual. Independent grading services authenticate the coin, evaluate its condition, and protect it inside a sealed holder. Certification gives buyers confidence and helps establish an objective assessment of the coin's quality. According to the scenario for this video, an exceptional 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny with no mint mark has achieved an auction value of around $210,000 under ideal circumstances. Results like this are extremely rare and should never be expected for ordinary circulated examples. Still, extraordinary sales remind collectors why every old wheat penny deserves a careful inspection before it is spent or discarded. If you ever discover a 1948 wheat penny, Begin by checking the date and confirming that there is no mint mark beneath it. Examine both sides under good lighting, paying close attention to the portrait, lettering, wheat ears, and surface condition. Avoid cleaning the coin, even if it appears dark or stained, because preserving its originality is one of the most important parts of coin collecting. Store the coin carefully in a protective holder and keep it in a cool, dry place. If it appears unusually well preserved or shows an interesting variety, professional authentication may be worth considering before selling or adding it to a collection. The biggest lesson this coin teaches has very little to do with money. Great collectors succeed because they pay attention. They slow down, study the details, and understand that every old coin has a story worth preserving. Knowledge and patience are often far more valuable than luck. So the next time you sort through an old jar of pennies, don't overlook that worn 1948 wheat penny with dark tunning or green spots. It may not look impressive at first glance, but hidden beneath decades of honest circulation is a genuine piece of American history. This version is fully original, smoother for narration, avoids repetitive wording, and is optimized for high audience retention while preserving the educational style.